Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Get Back to School week. This is for both adults and parents alike, meaning you don't have to be a parent to benefit from this information, but also we will be focusing a lot on children and our fascination with food from the day that we start putting everything in our mouth. Today, I have Faith with me. Faith Schoenecker is a speech pathologist. She has a lot of experience in this, and she's going to guide us through where to go from here and where to even beginning steps for us too. And so Faith, and please introduce yourself.
Hi guys, I am Faith Schoenecker. I'm a speech language pathologist and a feeding therapist. I own Root Speech Therapy and I do feeding therapy in and out of homes, helping kids and young adults work on their best eating habits from infancy all the way to adulthood.
And the first thing that we're going to talk about today is fueling our families, right? And starting out with food in general. And we have a PowerPoint here for you, which gives us some glitches sometimes. So right away, why we start with fall?
So fall is a time to head back into the classroom. A lot of families are getting back into the routine of waking up a little bit earlier, going to sleep a little bit sooner. Sports and activities are starting to amp up again. So it can be a really good time to set new habits, whether that's starting a new job or our kids are starting new classrooms. That's a huge leap for them. So how we fuel our day is critical. I've heard somewhere that kids eat anywhere between 8 to 12 times a day. That's especially true during the summer. Yeah. So if you've got a kid that's always grazing, always hungry, that creates a lot of opportunities for food and meals and snack. So we thought this would be the perfect time to just put some information together about how to get back on track with eating for the fall.
So insert some habits, because you're already changing so much, like you had mentioned before. You're already changing when you go to bed and what you're doing half the day anyway. And so I agree, it's a perfect time.
Yeah.
And one of the points in this here you said is that we'll talk about very shortly is breakfast feels like it's on the go. It's no longer a whole reunion of getting ready for the day. You're trying to get out the door as fast as you can too. And so
as you're getting organized, you're thinking about what's to come for the fall, ask yourself some questions about what you feel like you can realistically do. What I'm going to set myself up for the fall is going to be different than what Dr. Spree does for her fall routine. If you've got kids in high school compared to elementary school, it's all going to look different for you from year to year. But this fall, you can ask yourself, are you going to have more time to cook or are you looking at less? Are you willing to eat leftovers, or are you a kind of person that needs something fresh every day? Do you enjoy using the stove, oven, grilling, or you cut it fresh, slice and go? Will you be away in the evenings? Maybe you've got soccer. Maybe you're a teacher and you're going to be in the classroom until about 4.
Even like, do you like your food? Do you like it warmed up, or are you okay with colder foods? And so part of the preparation for that too.
Yep. You're going to want to ask yourself, is it time to start a grocery delivery? It's going to cost a little bit more, but is it going to be worth the time that you save with going to the grocery store for an hour a week? I know there's a lot of different options out there for grocery delivery. So I'm sure that if you ask around, you're going to get some really good recommendations from your friends or people at the office. Lastly, which day of the week are you going to focus on meal plan, meal prep? It's going to take time, and some days are going to work better than others. Some folks work on Sundays to get their whole meals planned for the week. Some people don't care to do it that way.
And some people like to do the whole meal in one day, where for our family, we have a smaller family, so we do it on Sundays and Wednesdays, and that helps break up the grocery list and break up the amount of time we're spending in the kitchen that day too. So lots of different ways to do it, but ask yourself these questions ahead of time so you can really plan for that. And you don't feel like you're diving into a routine maybe someone else does that wouldn't work for your family.
Absolutely. So likely there's a picky eater in your family. Maybe you are the picky eater. A normal family usually has a picky eater from time to time. Periods of picky eating are totally normal. But as a speech language pathologist with feeding therapy as one of my focuses, I have to throw in my plug about the picky eater. So below, I've listed some really big red flags that I watch for with my clients, and they're usually my clients because of these red flags. So watch for these with yourself and your family. Ongoing poor weight gain, if you're dropping down the percentiles, or unexplained weight loss related to food choices. This is more so true with the little ones. It's a big red flag. Ongoing choking, gagging, or coughing during meals, having ongoing problems with vomiting. I see this a lot. Avoiding all foods in a specific texture. So whether they're avoiding all wet things, all squishy things, or all crunchy things, that can be a sign of a bigger problem. Because we really need to focus on having a diverse, wide variety of foods.
And you've seen that in multiple age groups too, right? You've seen children grow up to be adults that still have a problem with those textures.
Absolutely, yeah. So often I will get kids on my caseload who have some significant feeding issues, and often when I talk to mom or dad usually have something going on with a strong preference towards a certain food group. So often I work with the kids, but it turns into a whole family therapy where we're talking about why those sensory avoidances are happening, or jaw development issues need to be corrected. So lastly, if you or your little one have less than 20 foods that they're able to consistently eat, especially if foods are common in the diet and then they leave the diet and your child totally refuses them, big red flag. And looking at, it might be a sign of a bigger issue where an evaluation might be appropriate.
Okay. And you do those your evaluations yourself?
I
too,
do.
don't
So
you?
I do feeding evaluations, and some other people that do it might be a really good occupational therapist or a feeding therapist with a speech and language background. So anybody who's well educated in issues related to the mouth and the jaw and digestion would be the people to get a hold of. And my contact info is in here too if you're looking for more information.
And if someone's just not sure if their child or teenager is on that borderline, would you still recommend that they give you a shout out, a call, and ask those questions?
Absolutely. So I know I do free phone consultations where I can just answer some questions and kind of weed through these yes and no's. And a lot of therapy places will be able to guide you through if it's a problem, if it's a phase, and kind of figure out the next step. So yes, definitely reach out if you have concerns about that.
Thank you very
Mhm.
much.
Yep.
I know what you're going into next is really like, when is it normal? And I know that's a hard line to
Mhm.
say, when is this normal? When is it a phase? But I know you wanted to briefly touch on that.
Yes.
So
Periods of picky eating are totally normal. Absolutely. So we want to make sure that these phases pass quickly, that kids are eating a wide variety of foods. But the picky eater is one who is yes to any of those issues in the previous slide. But all of us go through phases where we just don't want to eat a certain thing.
yeah,
Yep.
that makes sense.
Mhm.
As long as it's not ongoing.
For sure.
Okay.
Yep. So you're looking at issues that last for months and months. And usually parents, especially moms, are the one to be able to know. You might have a gut inkling, like something's not quite right with my child's feeding, and
follow that gut
feeling. Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's great advice. I know I've had that feeling from time to time too.
So I know if you've got little ones at your dinner table, you might have tried any of these things. I'm guilty too. So you might be saying, all right, once you eat your X, Y, and Z, we're going to have a dessert after. All of these things add a little added pressure to mealtimes. Just one bite, limiting options, saying, okay, you're going to have this certain food for dinner, and that's it. If you don't eat it, you're going to have it tomorrow when you wake up for breakfast. I've heard parents doing that. Giving in and offering an alternate meal. Okay, fine, we'll make mac and cheese. Or, okay, fine, we'll do a peanut butter and jelly, but we're going to eat this over here. So that causes a little bit of conflict in families, especially between a mom and a dad or different siblings, where we're all, most of us
want that food too.
Yeah. So we're having one group eat the dinner meal. Let's say it's lasagna tonight. And then, little brother doesn't want it, so he gets a PB&J. Most of the time, the PB&J is going to be comfortable. So that's going to be motivating next time. So not saying that we can't have other options on our table that we're excited about, but finding a way to make that lasagna experience achievable would be what I work on with my families.
Oh, that'd be such a relief. I mean,
Mhm.
just not having to make all these different meals and
Mhm.
the headache every day of the fight that you have
Yes.
for
Yeah.
it. So,
And then the last one is force feeding. So we're just gonna pop that food in your mouth even though you're not ready. I would caution against doing those kinds of tactics and try the next slide, which is some of our strategies to think about instead. So limiting snacks right before dinner. You want your little one and you to come to the table feeling ready to eat. As we're cooking the food, as we're smelling the food, our mouth is already creating enzymes that help break down our food. If we're coming to the table not hungry, those enzymes have not started to fuel up and get us really ready to eat. You know, when you've really got your mouth watering and you're just ready to eat. So I see it often. I've done it too. You're kind of passing out snacks to kill the time before dinner's ready. We want to avoid that as much as possible because kids who are full are not going to be ready to explore at the table. Include kids of all ages to help meal plan. Our favorite thing to do at our house is to get out the weekly ad in the newspaper for all the grocery stores like Cub and Aldi, and give the kids a marker or a pencil or crayon, and they go through and they circle everything that they want and they're excited about.
Cool.
So I mean, you'd be
Get them
surprised.
involved in the grocery shopping.
Yep. And then so let's say you're going to buy apples. You have your child pick out apples from the newspaper, they give it a circle, and then that way they're involved, they're invested, and they're excited about when they see the apples come to your kitchen. So this is one rule that I like to recommend and I try to follow is the 1-to-1-to-1 is your meal should have something that your child already likes. It's a comfortable food. It's safe to them. The second food is something that they like, but maybe it's hit or miss. Sometimes they like it, sometimes they don't. Something that they're going to work hard to explore. And then the third food is something that they've avoided in the past or they're not so excited about. And you kind of walk on eggshells saying, okay, are they gonna lose it that this is on the plate? So something that they like, something that they're not so sure about, and something that they usually don't like. Because the more exposures we have to new things, the more likely it is that they're going to be ready to try it someday.
And do you recommend this for trying at home, trying in your school lunches, or every meal, or once a week, or how often do you incorporate that 1-1-1 rule?
That's a really good question. I try to incorporate it in every meal. So
so they're getting a lot of exposure to something that they're secure with, something that they're not so sure about, and something that they just keep seeing. Maybe they're more willing to try it.
Yep,
would you
absolutely.
say that?
Yep. So even if, let's say if cucumbers are something that you eat a lot of and you'd like to see your kids eat a few more cucumbers, maybe it's one slice of one cucumber that is on the corner of the plate. There's a much better chance that they're going to try that cucumber someday if it's been on the plate gradually over time. It's one little slice. You could always model eating it. You could talk about how it tastes and smells. But I think just getting that constant exposure gets them confident enough to try it. If they only see that food once a year, they're probably not going to be ready to put it in their mouth.
Or even know what it is.
Or even know what it is. Exactly. Yeah.
Something fun, which is it's a new branch to what you're saying, but we have been having fun playing with these, is they're actually like cookie cutters, but you can buy them specifically for food. And this one's a star. There's some other designs. There's hearts that come in all these different, a whole kit of them. Hopefully you can see this. But if the child actually, we did it with mozzarella here. If the child actually gets to stamp it and make their own design out of it, especially if it's a food they don't like, then they've touched it, they've experienced it, they had fun with it, and they're probably more be willing to touch it and do it.
Absolutely.
One thing you don't have in here is something I've seen you do with your children is talk about, do you call it a tongue touch?
A tongue tap.
A tongue tap.
Yes. So at our house, putting a food that you're not comfortable with into your mouth is very invasive. If you're not comfortable looking at it or touching it, it's a lot to ask a child to put in your mouth, chew it, swallow it. That's a huge step. So what we do at our house is tongue taps, where your child's in full control of whether it goes into the mouth or not. So our kids might they'll say, I'm not so sure about that food. And so if they're not so sure, we do a tongue tap where we just literally tap it to the tongue. They're getting the smell, they're getting the taste, they're building confidence, and it feels safe. Some kids, especially the kids that I work with feeding therapy, foods don't feel safe because they have lacked the ability to chew it and swallow it safely. So it feels a little scary. So tongue taps are a really low pressure way to increase the interaction with the food.
And I've seen them eat some of the stuff after that too.
Yes.
So
Yes,
it
and
really has worked.
most of the time they do a tongue tap and they're like, oh, it's not poison. I can eat it. It's not that bad. And usually it's pretty good. Mom does.
And then they're sneaking
Yeah.
them later on.
Exactly. So tongue taps are probably one of my favorite little tricks to get kids to be more involved with tasting things. Second is using clear descriptions like squishy, crunchy, savory. Why isn't there? It's summertime and the doors get left open all the time. I don't know if it's like that at
That
your
comes
house.
with children's territory too.
Yeah. One good thing about fall is I might be able to say, close the door a little bit less. Izzy's not old enough yet, but I feel like the constant in and out of the house.
And we're telling the husband to close the door so the child doesn't climb out the door.
Yes, exactly. So one thing I notice a lot with families is I hear words like yucky and gross and icky, and I don't like it. And if a child hears that word with one food one time, it's probably done. If you hear yucky paired with a new food, there's almost no way that they're going to be excited about trying it. So like mozzarella, for example, we can say it's squishy, it's soft, it's a little bit wet.
And so even if you say not yucky, they're still going to hear yucky.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a big key thing is you can say yummy, but that doesn't really mean a lot. It doesn't help our brain understand what's going to happen when we put it into our mouth.
Yeah.
The
Even
next,
with kids, this is off subject, but even when kids get adjusted, if their parents say it doesn't hurt, they're terrified that it's
Is
going
that
to
true?
hurt.
yeah,
But if they say what it's going to do or what kind of noise it's going to make, they really do well with that.
absolutely.
We have a visitor now too.
So the next one is quality over quantity. So I see a lot of families that get really a lot of energy about how much off the food is consumed. We are more focused on positive quality interactions with the food rather than how much they're actually taking in. This is a big one is limit all distractions during mealtime. Phone goes away, consider leaving it in another room so it's not a distraction. That goes for kids. If you've got a young teenager who's got a phone, make a new rule that everybody's phone goes somewhere else and then turn off the TV.
Absolutely. There are so many studies that show how much more on health, the more we consume and how unhealthy of choices that we make when we're eating food and watching something.
Mm-hmm.
So the two together do not go well hand in hand. If we're focused on our food, our body's able to build up those enzymes, break down the food better, and the whole process, the chemical response, the relationship that we're supposed to have our food is supposed to be intentional and focused.
Yeah.
If our focus is somewhere else, you ever try to talk and eat at the same time? You just end up talking a long time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because our body's designed to focus right on that food. So that's huge to turn off the electronics, even if it's a very short, quick meal before you run out the door, that you're not distracted by those devices.
Yep. Make the table for eating too. This isn't on the board, but if your table has become an arts and crafts catch-all paperwork, take a few minutes and clear off the table so that the table can be used for food again. It'll feel really good to set the table and just come together as a family at the end of the day. Even if you're only able to eat one family meal at the table a day or per week, just make the table for food again. I think you'll really like it.
Yeah. And not only that, the cleanup is way easier.
It's way easier. Yeah,
It's just
absolutely.
like
Yeah,
your stuff is there and you know exactly where to put it, and the cleanup goes a lot smoother too.
for sure.
Mom.
1 second here, guys. So now that we talk about, okay, when to look for the signs, now we're going to go through breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so some of these things you've had heard before, some of them might seem brand new. We may repeat ourselves here and there of how to make food
It
fun.
looks like a
Can you clean
Christmas
that for me? Can you clean it like this?
Yeah.
And really the idea can go on and on and on. When you find a system that works for you, stick with it.
Absolutely.
Pick little pieces here and there that make this achievable so that you feel your best throughout the day.
And our goal is not to tell you what to eat. in the sense of more having you explore your food more, what works with your family, what works with your children, what kind of setup you have. If it's food at work, are you heating it up? Are you eating it fresh? Or what does that look like? All those questions in the beginning, like we said, ask yourself. Here are the next steps of, okay, now that you know those answers, here's some ideas so that you can take it to the next step.
So some of these will resonate more than others. Start your day off with water. I know when I wake up, the first thing I'm thinking about is setting the button on my coffee pot to get my coffee, but I try to grab a glass of water as I'm waiting for my coffee to go. You probably know way more about this than I do, but I just feel like it gets me out of sleep mode and gets me into go mode.
Yeah, absolutely. So water works like energy the way that we think of coffee. Don't get me wrong, I drink a lot of coffee myself, but it literally starts up your metabolism and it starts up your brain wiring process. Not that it ever stops, but it gets you on the go.
Yeah.
The other thing is that most of us throughout the night become dehydrated because it's so long without having any refreshment.
Yep.
And so a glass of water is the best way to start your day.
Yeah.
If you are prone to stomach aches, if you have pregnancy and you struggle with nausea and stuff, sipping water is also fine. You don't always have to wake up and chug the glass.
Yeah. Try overnight oats in a clear glass jar. I got really excited when mason jars went back into all these functional purposes. So if you're a person that really is on the go, you're not able to sit down at the table, but you're flying out the door, I really like overnight oats. You can start with a healthy oat and then add whatever protein you want. You could do it with yogurt and any kind of variety of flavors. So Pinterest has lots of great ideas. I know we'll have a lot of recipes out for different things, and just trying to find what works for you. If you don't like oatmeal, then don't do it.
Right, absolutely. But then other ideas that we have listed here instead of overnight oats. The more carbohydrates that you have in the morning, this is your sugary foods, anything that's already in a wrapper that you didn't have to make yourself, that really doesn't have an expiration date. Something like cereal, you open the box, it could get stale, but really the cereal could sit on the shelf for a very long time. So if you associate that with the shelf life, the longer something can be preserved with what the substance is the more fresh is the healthier to go. So avoiding those sugary things to start your day off that way, then it really gives you just a better morning. So there's other lists on here. If you are only a coffee drinker and you just can't get food in the morning, you can add coconut oil or butter or oat or almond milk or anything like that to your coffee to get your metabolism going and get those proteins and those fats going instead of just the carbohydrates. Those are options too. And then you listed some really great options for food to grab and go.
Yeah. So I noticed if I have a granola bar or a sugary cereal, I'm hungry in an hour or two. So I feel like I get that immediate sugar rush, and then it's gone. I've got nothing to sustain me. So one thing I try to do, sometimes by accident, sometimes intentional, is I keep a reusable spoon in the car for emergencies. So if I've got one of those overnight oats jars, or if I have a yogurt cup or any of these other items, I don't think they have any, but you can go get yogurt from the fridge.
But I'm gonna look if there's yogurt.
Go look.
cup.
Go check, see what's in there.
So
And they're great for grab and go for snacks.
they're
too.
great for grab and go, and I can just send them to the fridge and they're on their own. So yogurt is protein packed. It's gonna leave you feeling full longer. Cottage cheese, nut butters, eggs. You could do some hard-boiled eggs during your meal prep, and that can last you through the week. Avocados and smoothies. They are gonna make you feel really good for hours to get you through. So when you are planning on getting lunches packed up, some of you might be planning on sending your little one with a packed lunch from home. We put together some ideas for things
Absolutely. And some key words to look for here.
Yeah. So really there's no, like you said, there's no magic recipe. This is the perfect lunch, because what we're really looking for is a variety of things that you enjoy that make you feel good.
Yeah. And so some of these words that stand out to us when we were going back and forth, what do we pack for lunch for ourselves and for the kids? Currently we bring all our own food to daycare. So a little bit different than all age groups, but we're thinking simple. the more complex, the more ingredients something has, typically the less likely I am to do it because it's that much more work.
Yeah.
And then usually you'd have to heat it up or the process of packaging it. So the only time it's not simple for my family is if we make food the night before and then we use that food for leftovers. And so sometimes we just make larger batches, so it's one less meal that you have to prep later on in the week. And we really like to do that with our favorite foods too. So the more simple that we can make it, the more likely we are to bring our own lunch.
Absolutely. And looking at what's in season too. So pretty soon we're going to be having, apples are going to be more easy to come by than the fresh berries. So looking at what's in season and what's on sale at the store.
Tomatoes and pumpkins and squash and other things like that too are now being the riper ones.
Yeah.
Diversity. And so we were talking diversity in color and texture in the likes and dislikes of the people eating. So we're talking about the one rule.
Yep.
Correct?
Yeah.
And then diverse, does that ring any other bells to you, or are you thinking another word?
So I know if my kids packed their lunch, they would probably have like a banana, apple, and blueberries. They're their favorite things. Very colorful, but not very diverse in the quality of the food. So Dr. Spear and I were talking about making sure that we get in the fats that we need, the healthy fats. We need those to for brain growth and development and feeling full. So healthy fats.
Nuts and seeds or things out of that are eggs and olives and different things that are fat substance. We're not talking about fat like your fried chicken, right?
Yes, absolutely. So the fats, the carbohydrates like the apples and the blueberries, they're great. They're packed full of vitamins, but they're also going to make you feel drained within a couple hours. So that's where those fats are so important.
And the 3 o'clock slump we've all experienced before. Well, kids will experience that too if most of their meal is just carbohydrates. So the last one is the proteins. And the proteins, we often think of meat, but that's also cheese and eggs and nuts and seeds sometimes go in that category as well. For example, really confusing, but a cashew is actually a fruit instead of a nut. So it's okay if you don't know exactly which category it is in, but typically we don't want our brown everything's in brown, everything's packaged, and everything's a carbohydrate. Those are things to avoid.
So often most colorful is best, but also look at those 3 categories of the carbohydrates, the fats, and the proteins.
And last thing is to remember that our food is our fuel. So that's how our body has enough stored to get us through however many days we can go without eating. But let's be honest, we're all eating every day, most meals a day. And so think of your food as fuel, and that just makes it easier to make a better choice.
Absolutely.
So we like to talk about things that we love to eat and really healthy swaps that they are. And a lot of these we already mentioned. Are there any that you'd like to concentrate on more that you see often?
When I think of the lunches that I always envied when I was a kid was the Lunchable. The Lunchable in the plastic thing.
Cool kids.
They were
really
so cool to get that Lunchable. But really what I am all about now is the very mature meat, cheese, and nut tray, where we're having the adult protein-packed version of the Lunchable. So I think that that's what we do as a family a lot is pretty much getting all of the fun shapes and colors, but just in a healthy swap.
And that you're making it yourself.
Yeah, cheaper.
And so you know where those meats and those cheeses come from too. You can add a few things in.
Yep. So next we want to just give you a few things to keep in mind as you are packing lunch.
And if at any point we're talking too fast, just pull out your phone during this video, take a picture of the slide, and
That's okay.
okay, can you go check on it? See if she wants to join us.
We've got helpers today.
And then you can always refer back to it when you're thinking, okay, now it's time to come around to lunches. You have these slides in front of you, or we can provide them for you too.
Yeah, that's a good point. So often when kids are getting to school, if you've got a kindergartner or first grader, that lunch bag is sometimes they haven't seen that lunch bag in a long time, or it's the first time they've ever used it. Or if they've gotten a new water bottle. I know a lot of kids post-COVID are responsible for their own water bottle now. So practice in the weeks before school starts how to open and close the bags.
Little things like actually this might be it's loud, excuse me, a hard clasp to shut and open. But if they have experience with that, then they're not going to be so intimidated by it.
Yep. And so if you've got a kiddo that's just starting school, let's say mealtime is already a little stressful for your kids. We don't want to add any extra stress by having them feel not confident when they arrive to the lunchroom. And then next is keeping the 1-to-1 rule when you're packing the lunch bag. Hazel's here. So keeping that 1-to-1 rule, where in the lunch bag you can add something that your child is really excited to eat, maybe a favorite food, something they're not so sure about, and then the last one, something that they don't often love, but they're okay with. So just gradually improving the tolerance of new foods. Swap the pouches, so those applesauce pouches with the nozzle in the front. Swap those out for the real food. We want to see little jaws for crunching. This ties into the next one. Instead of an applesauce in a pouch, just throw in the whole apple. It's going to be easier, better for the environment, less plastic. You're not going to have to cut or slice anything, but and this is where I focus a lot on with my clients, is giving kids the opportunity to use their jaws and their teeth the way that they're designed to do.
So if everything's mashed together,
Mhm.
they're never experiencing new textures.
Yep.
Too. Even though the food may be a different texture, the actual movement and ability to do that is
Yep,
not.
absolutely. So I explain this to a lot of families, but
This is kind of like a heart.
it is like a
She's
heart.
looking into the heart mozzarella. So
Yes,
that
she
was a
got her
big
heart
win.
mozzarella. You want to eat it? Oh, he's just gonna eat it. So we're kind of part of a generation who drinks their calories. We've got a lot of parents who are all about their energy tea and their Starbucks and their Caribou and the smoothies. And really those do nothing for our jaws. We're not having to work the muscles of the face to do anything with them. We're really just drinking calories. So thank you.
Somebody's awake.
So this is a big one. I really want to see more kids chewing foods. Goldfish crackers really don't count because they really take about 3 chews and a swallow. An apple or a jerky or salami, those are great to work on. Jot
And
it down.
tasteful too.
Yep, tasteful too.
Can I get Israel?
Sure, absolutely. We have such good helpers today. So Bento Box is something, it's a brand name, and it's something that you had exposed me to that I had never heard of. I'm going to put on the screen a couple other brands that we like. But this is an example of the Bento Box. I'm going to reach right over you. First of all, the awesome part is they're leak proof. So say I want to put something to dip in, like hummus or a homemade ranch or whatever, it would be right here. Nuts or seeds or anything that goes really easy into this. This is backwards for me in this spot. But there's also the food separated, so it's not touching.
Yep.
This part comes right out and is easily washable. What other things do you love about this?
I like that it's leak proof. I like that your food or your sandwiches or your crunchy things are not going to get smashed. Anything that's supposed to be dry is going to stay dry. Let's say you've got some pretzel rods that you're going to dip in hummus. You're not going to have soggy pretzels when you get to school. And that's going to be huge for the kiddo who really likes their food a certain way. And if we can agree, most kids are probably not going to want soggy anything for dinner.
No, not at all.
You can also
so
take
the same fresh longer.
Yep.
Too.
You could also take these to soccer practice or whatever fall activities you've got going on.
And I've seen adults with lunchboxes like this, but if you're like, that's just not a big enough portion size for me, or I don't have that many variety of foods, this is also sort of the adult version of this. So
I like
comes
that
with
it
a
has a
fork.
fork in it. That's
Kind
cute.
of cool, right?
How do you
And
say?
different categories. Let me hold this on one quick second. This way. And then
Oh,
this is something else you can
Here,
get, like
Richard.
this easy
Wait, go get some
grab and go.
hi.
And it has all your reusable utensils that you
It's so
utensils that you can just leave in the vehicle, and it comes in this nice little
Mm-hmm.
piece. So there's lots of newer inventions and
Mhm.
ways to make simple grab and go lunches,
Mhm.
adult and child like friendly,
Absolutely.
that you can have. I put in beeswrap here. Okay, different container holders in case you lose a lid. Or
Yeah,
you make all
not
these
that.
reusable
Not
bags.
that
So you can do a Velcro style reusable bag. That Art of Lunch is a brand I like. They have zippers, and you can put in any
Mhm.
types of foods in here too.
Yep. And then those rinse out really easily. So at the end of the day, you can just shake it out, rinse it out, and refill for the next day. Thank you, Archer. Absolutely. So some foods are better cold. We can all agree that, well, like grapes in that picture. I wouldn't want warm grapes.
Mm-hmm. No,
And
I
a lot
wouldn't
of
do that.
a lot of what we eat needs to be temperature specific. So consider using frozen water bottles to keep things nice and cold. Some other things that we do is we'll freeze.
Oh, sorry, Faith.
That's okay. We'll freeze. So this just came to my mind. Is freezing yogurt or freezing string cheese,
Yeah.
and it keeps things a little bit cold, and then it's about the right temperature when it comes to be lunchtime.
Yep, we've done that before too. So once in a lot of times, can you wave? This is Archer, by the way. He's great at sampling our foods.
He is.
I'm not.
He might disagree today though. So one thing I've never thought of, because I just haven't been parent long enough to have a child in school, is how hungry the child gets after school. And so Faith put together some great tips for after school success
Yeah.
and how to make that transition to not upset dinner and
Yes.
going forward.
Yep. So earlier I said make sure that you have your kids coming to the dinner table hungry and ready to eat. So what we try to do is I have something ready when the kids get off the bus or I'm picking them from school, is just having some of those healthy, fresh foods out on the counter. They can eat it if they want. They don't have to, but really that they get those maybe 3 or 4 choices out on the counter, and that's what they get. Some kids have their lunch as early as 10:30 or 10:45.
That's
And
early.
it's so early.
That's
And
before breakfast for some people.
yes, exactly. So by the time that you're getting them at after school, they might be running on fumes. They might be ready for a snack and getting pretty hungry and crabby. Definitely, my 7-year-old would never be hungry or crabby after school ever. So just think about how you might, and especially during these first few weeks. Okay, sure. So think about what your child's day looks like and how to best set them up for feeling good after school, especially during the first few weeks when the demands are pretty high.
Absolutely. And that transition period for you is also a transition for them.
Yeah.
I know that they tell you that in the note in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you can help curb their hunger and help solve that problem for them, that makes everything else easier too.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so if you know you're going somewhere right after school, just having some of those snacks we talked about earlier in your car.
Yeah. So if you're like me, you're thinking, okay, great, but I don't have time. I don't have now. I'm probably not going to have time when the school year starts. But so here's some ideas to hopefully maximize your time. Start small. If you have a goal to do packed lunches, it doesn't have to be 5 days a week. Start with just one meal a week. Let's say Fridays are a special day, and that's going to be your packed lunch day. And just grow from there. Start with something that you can do. Washing, slicing, peeling is a time suck. So if you don't have time for it, consider adding the whole food. I know my 3-year-old just served me a whole carrot that was peeled with the top still on. Oh, there it is. Oh, there it goes.
It's okay. We'll still eat it.
So there's really no right or wrong way to do fruits and vegetables as long as they're clean and they taste good. So
Mommy,
yes,
what does nurture have?
it's one of the pieces from this cool thing.
And like we were talking about which days you can do it in the week too.
No, I
Because
have
sometimes it's one day a week, sometimes it's multiple days. And then sometimes it's not just one person. Like my husband really loves to cook and put things together, and I don't. I'm much more of a snacker. So I'm better at putting together the snacks that we have, and he's better at making the whole meals. And so divide and conquer is sometimes the way to go too. And then you can always, the night before, the more that you plan, the better the next day goes too. So
Yes.
when they get home, empty out the bag,
Mhm.
clean out the lunchbox. Because if you have to do that all in the morning, it's unlikely that you can do it all.
Yeah.
We have faith in you, but try not to make it harder on yourself
Yes.
than it already has to be.
Yeah. So if when you get home, the first thing that you do is you dump out and clean out everything. Why don't you take that extra step and kind of stack the habit of, if we're cleaning out, let's add in tomorrow's things while we're cleaning out
Yeah.
from.
And that's that exposure to food again, so they know what's coming.
Yes.
And so we want to wrap this up for you. I know there's a ton of good information on here. If you came in today during your adjustment and you're right in the middle of this and you feel like you really missed out, we can always send it to you too. And you have great resources with Faith and myself. And guess what? Our team has also been parenting and bringing lunches for a long time too.
Yes.
So they have great ideas. Here's a few last notes for us before we take off.
Yeah, so heading back to school is a huge adjustment. Like we said, the sleep is going to change. The workload on you and your child is definitely amping up. Social demands of starting school and food, they're all different. So just be mindful that if you might see some extra behaviors or new challenges at the dinner table, it's all normal. Give yourself a couple weeks to adjust. And then you mentioned this really great.
We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. So a lot of these ideas are Faith's. A couple of these ideas are mine, things that we've tried before. You know some of your own. But also, we're not the first people that have ever sent kids to school or to daycare and are trying to feed ourselves too. And so there's this great site. She's on Facebook and Instagram, and I don't remember the name of the person that leads it, but it's called Kids Eat in Color. And it's a really great way to feed off of what we've been talking about today, how to talk to your children about food, how to educate them to try different foods.
That was a good pun.
That was a good one.
To feed into.
Yeah.
To feed into.
Feed into feeding.
Yes, to feed into our feeding talk. Next, consider how often and what your child ate over the summer and respect that their body is likely anticipating foods at the same time. If you've got a teenager who's been waking up and having breakfast at 10 or 11 in the morning, it's likely they're going to be hungry at 10 or 11 in the morning. And just anticipating that our body cues itself to eat based on what it's been doing. And you can start to, if you want to avoid that, you can start to counteract that. So start waking up a little bit earlier and eating a little bit earlier if that's the time that we're going to be hopefully eating as the school year starts. Watch for signs for picky eating that might be a sign of a bigger problem. So all the way back at the beginning of the video, I listed some red flags, some concerning things that might be a sign of a bigger problem. Seek out a speech language pathologist or an occupational therapist, somebody who has experience with eating disorders. If you're noticing that picky eating is going beyond the typical period that maybe lasts for a month or 6 weeks or 8 weeks. Anything that lasts a couple of months is more of a problem and a sign of maybe an
Even
event.
if it just seems totally off and it's throwing you for a loop, it's giving you that wrenchy gut feeling that something's really not right. It's so much better to ask than to wait if you're not sure.
Yep.
And so pick up the phone, ask for a consult, reach out, ask us in the office, and it will help direct you in that way too.
Adjust and be flexible. So be flexible with yourself, adjust based on what your family is needing from you. If it's you've worked all week and you need to cut yourself some slack, cut yourself some slack.
Yeah.
This is an easing into kind of thing.
If you want to make 5 lunches a week, start with 1 or 2, like
Yep.
you were mentioning in the beginning, is know that your end goal may change, but that it might take a few milestones to get there.
Yep. With any good habit, going totally cold turkey towards something can be really hard and sometimes not always in the best interest of creating success. So model healthy skills to your kids by treating your own body well. So what I like to do is make the kids' meal a different version of my own. So if I want my kids to someday eat salads, then I'm going to be eating salads and I'm going to be giving them ingredients to a salad. So modeling what we want our kids to do. And last but not least, no, it's for pushing the cheese out the back. Yeah. So you describe why some foods are in the lunch bag, and the Kids Eat in Color program says a lot of really good information about this. But describe to your kids why you're choosing the foods that you are. If there's an apple in your bag, you can say, well, an apple is good for you. Well, kids don't know what that means. What does good for you mean? You can say things like, well, apples have fiber, so they make your belly feel great.
Yeah.
Or almonds have protein, so you can climb monkey bars. They lead to strength. So the Kids Eat in Color program has a lot of really good ways to talk to kids about food. But yeah, just keeping your kids in the loop about why you're picking what you're picking.
And it makes you think about what you're choosing too. Yeah. Why am I not eating dessert? We all know the answer to that. But also, why am I eating this? Well, I want to work out more or get better sleep or whatever it may be. So much of our body's response is our response to food. So thank you so much for being with us today. I know lunches can be hard, but they can also be really, really fun.
Mhm.
And eating can be fun, and there are definitely ways to make it doable and to expand our palate and to train our body correctly.
Yep, and that's one thing I like about feeding therapy is that you can't avoid it. Food is going to be a part of your day to some extent or not. So I try to embrace it the best that I can to make food as fun and functional as possible because we know that food is how we fuel our body and become
the rest of your life.
Exactly. We can't run away from it. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for being with us today too, Faith. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate having you here.
I hope you guys didn't mind all the background noise, but anyways, reach out if you have any questions, and we're looking forward to hearing some feedback about this video.
Awesome. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Happy eating. It's okay. You're going to eat.